Why, hello, gentlemen, street rats, gentle thems, and vermin of all kinds and sorts. Welcome to my very new series where I complain about Dungeons and Dragons. For a little context, much like other bourbon Americans, I got into D&D alongside the Great Pandemic of 2020, where I had a lot of free time and picked up the hobby, in which I've been playing semi-frequently since then. I played some good campaigns, played some bad campaigns, and even DM my own games every now and then. What I'm trying to say is I have some grounds to critique some less favorable elements of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I love this game, but I am more than willing to point out what could be improved. First up on the chopping block is the one, the only Artificer. Ah, the Artificer. What a strange and out of left field choice for the 13th class, and really the final class added to the game. In the world of magic wielders and warriors, you decide to build inventions to do all the work for you. I'm going to go over a slight bit of history of the class because I feel as if it's worth pointing out. It has a unique and slightly confusing existence as the only class to be released after the initial launch of the Player's Handbook back in 2014. 3 years later, in 2017, the Artificer Unearthed Arcana was released. This detailed a new class that featured a choice of two subclasses at level 1, being able to cast spells at 3rd level, and a slew of neat abilities relating to the use of creation of magic. If I can give Wizards of the Coast some credit here, the concept of the class capitalizing off of magic items, one of the most fun aspects of D&D in my opinion, is incredibly well thought out and unique as far as I'm aware. We then wouldn't hear anything about the Artificer until 2019, when the revisited Artificer was dropped with the book Eberron Rising from the Last War on the horizon. This version looked vastly different for the first draft, as you now got your spells at 1st level, but now had to wait until 3rd level for your subclass, which makes more sense in my opinion. This version would ultimately be the final draft that released later in Eberron the Last War in 2019. Except that's not really where the history of the Artificer ends. You see, DMs were skeptical to allow their players to play a magic item crafting, gun wielding engineer into their settings. Also, with Eberron being primarily a campaign setting, confusion arose within groups that were more rules heavy than others as to whether you were only intended to play the Artificer in an Eberron based campaign. So, in November of 2020, the Artificer was re released in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This version streamlined a bit of lore and flavor around the Artificer, as well as adding a new subclass, the Armorer. Now that I've laid out a history of this class, perhaps you can already see some problems. First, I'm honestly shocked it took nearly 3 years for the concept of a new class to come to the writers. Furthermore, it wasn't until late 2020 that most people could play an Artificer without getting the stink eye from their DM. Even further still, the class was released in such a confusing fashion that many didn't even get to play the character they wanted due to a DM being like, "my setting." To put this into perspective, Pathfinder 2nd Edition released in August of 2019 with 12 classes, much like D&D 5th Edition, but then released a supplement only 11 months later containing 3 more completely new classes. Of course, it might not be completely fair to compare the two systems, but you get the point here. And to boot, the Artificer class on release was, and still is, very underdeveloped in terms of subclasses and new features compared to every other class in the game. The Cleric, for example, on release back in 2014, possessed 6 different subclasses they were able to choose from and later received 8 more for a total of 14. How many does the Artificer have? 4. It has 4. And I'd argue that one of those subclasses was made irrelevant by another subclass. Now would be as good of a time as any to dive into the abilities of the Artificer and see what makes it tick. So when you create an Artificer, you get spellcasting, pretty standard, and magical tinkering. Something to note about the Artificer spellcasting is that you're not a full caster, you're a half caster, which puts you in the realms of paladins and rangers. Keep that in mind as we go forward. And magical tinkering. What does magical tinkering do? Well, nothing. It does nothing. You can apply minor benefits to an object of your choice that all amount to the ability of being cute flavor thing that you forget about within the next level. Now, don't get me wrong, I really appreciate the flavor here, and it's very nice to have an ability that says to do the cute things your class should already be able to do, but people could just be mad at you in the first place for not doing something that's on your character sheet. But I digress. The thing is, none of these abilities actually just hold their ground above 1st level. They're purely flavor. Like, I've done in some of the campaigns, I've done just like cute little like toys I can mess with or to give to other people's gifts, but that's about it. Okay, as we move away from the first level abilities, we move on to the second level, and what is most definitely the most contentious and controversial ability of the Artificer: infuse items. This is a doozy. To put it in the quickest way I know possible, essentially you get certain slots. Think of it almost like Eldritch invocations, in that you can either produce a set magic item listed by the class, or you could create pre-existing magic items that are also selectable from a list. This essentially breaks the way how D&D works, and why many people don't even want artificers in their game. Where you could do something very flavorful and fun, being like returning weapon, which allows you to attach it to a something like a hand axe or a javelin. For when you throw it, it immediately returns to the owner's hand, or repeating shot, which you can put on a crossbow to get rid of that pesky reloading ability. But the thing is, most people use this as a way to cheese stat bonuses or get OP magic items that the DM didn't intend for. For example, AC bonuses are very rare in 5th edition and thus very powerful. So, what many people will do is they'll go up to their barbarian and say, "Hi, would you like a +1 to AC?" And they're like, "Sure." And then the artificer's also like, "Would you also like a +1 on your battle axe?" And it does magic damage to overcome all those resistances. So, in turn, the artificer can buff their allies in a way that is not possible otherwise, and completely circumvents the way encounters are balanced. Now, you could just agree with your party to gentlemen's out of such behavior, but that's not how many people want to play the game. This leads me to a point I have with the class in general. You're very weak and fragile in the early levels. It's most likely the Artificer is going to dump every stat for con and intelligence, so you essentially have nothing to defend yourself other than your poor AC, simple weapons, and first level spells that certainly aren't going to turn the tides of the battlefield. This is compounded with the fact, if you consider the Armorer subclass, which essentially forces you to lug around heavy armor if you build your character around it. Don't get me wrong, I greatly enjoy this class. In fact, I played an Alchemist Artificer for the better part of a year in a campaign with my friends. Being able to support the party in a way no one else can was gratifying, but I still couldn't help but see the issues. Your damage output as an Artificer is minuscule. We can hardly justify giving the Artificer any items that help with this because of the unprecedented support you have in the form of infused items and Flash of Genius, another problematic ability we'll look at soon. Bards can be skill monkeys and have access to nearly any high-level spells, and clerics can do, well, literally anything. And artificers are left in this weird state where they can hardly do anything on their own, but their very existence breaks the players around them and makes DMs everywhere decide whether or not they even want to allow the class in their game to begin with. So, let's look at the third level abilities now. This is, well, your subclass. You also get another ability, Right Tool for the Job. This is another, cute ability that artificers get that isn't super necessary. But your subclasses options are as follows: Alchemist, Armorer, Artillerist, and Battlesmith, aka Potion, Armors, Guns, and whatever the hell the Battlesmith is. Alchemists are if you want to play a more support-oriented Artificer, and they do pretty well at that. Your Potions abilities are really flavorful and really neat, where you can basically spin on a table to get a random beneficial effect. If you want to take a note from my play, I ended up creating my own expanded potion list. I created some more chaotic effects, and that served to be really, really entertaining for my party. The Armorer is the most recent subclass released in Tasha's, and it sure shows. It's just really good overall. You get proficiency with heavy armor, which the Artificer probably didn't need. And you can be flexible in whether you want to play a more melee-oriented Artificer that safeguards their allies, or a more slink in the back and do lots of damage from far away. The Artillerist is just guns. It's not really much else to talk about there. And the Battlesmith is the melee artificer before the armorer existed. You get the cool ability of having a robot pet, which could be super flavorful and fun, but there's not much else regarding that. I would say the armorer kind of makes the Battlesmith irrelevant, mostly because you get far more abilities and bonuses for being a melee artificer than you do as the Battlesmith, unless you just really, really, really want a robot dog, which I can't blame you. 6th level, Tools of Expertise. Proficiency bonus doubled for any ability check that you make using a tool you're proficient with. Whatever, just, I guess, makes more sense more than anything. Flash of Genius at 7th level. This is another problematic spot. So, when another creature you can see within 30 feet makes an ability check or saving throw, use your reaction to add your intelligence mod to the roll. And if you're doing anything right with the Artificer, you're going to have a +5 in intelligence. So, you don't have anything else you really need to use your reaction for. So at any point, at any time, if a person makes a saving throw, you can just, boom, add your intelligence mod to the roll. This has saved my party so many times, I cannot tell you. And it truly feels like you cheat out a lot of saving throws, and you really do. It got to the point in the campaign where my DM politely asked me to nerf this ability because I could just cheese out so many encounters by just making people win their saving throws. And I completely understand. It is an insanely powerful ability that has no reason to be as good as it is. 10th level, Magic Item Adept. Whatever. Attuned to more magic items. Spell Storing Item at 11th level. An ability that seems really cool at first, that it's actually a lot more limited than you think, and ultimately doesn't really do anything. Magic Item Savant. Same thing as Magic Item Adept, except a little bit better. Magic Item Master, same thing, just a bit better. And then Soul of Artifice is your typical 20th level ability that's really, really powerful, but ultimately probably isn't ever going to go off because of the nature of 20th level abilities. So, what's to be said about the Artificer? Well, it really feels like this class was made far before anything else in this game in a weird way. I almost feel as if some abilities like Infuse Item and Flash of Genius need full-on erratas, but it's a bit too late for that drastic change to happen. I would love to see the concept of the Artificer expanded into more subclasses. There's a lot you can do with the concept, and it's simply a shame it's not being explored more. Personally, I'm in the process of writing a homebrew supplement that includes a good number of extra Artificer subclasses that I could share in the future if there's a demand for it. So all in all, I appreciate you listening to this rant about a nerdy tabletop game we all enjoy. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe if you'd like me to continue making content surrounding Dungeons & Dragons. And trust me, I have a lot more to say. But easily look at some more classes, some individual supplements, or just overarching gameplay rules as a whole. So, I'll see you in the next one.